We have the live use case, which is a student accommodation block in Nottingham. So there is a 12 million pound sterling building. It has 124 rooms, and it's already fully let. It generates the cash flow, almost 1 million pound sterling.
Hello everybody, this is Value.Tokenized with CryptoTwins. In this episode, we're interviewing Arnoldas Nauseda, CEO of Smartlands. Smartlands have recently tokenized a high-yield student housing in Nottingham, United Kingdom, and they have the plans to tokenize over 1 billion of assets by 2023. And we're going to talk about how do they want to achieve that. Hi Arnoldas, thank you so much for joining us today at Value Tokenized. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Can you start by telling us a little bit about your background? How did your career path look like before it led you to blockchain?
I have a 15 years experience in finance, in banking, in real estate, in technology. So prior to joining Smartlands, I spent 5 years basically as a full-time entrepreneur. I started companies, I sold them. And then 2 years ago, when everyone started talking about blockchain, I became wondering what new opportunities it can open to traditional finance. And basically I realized that the benefits are immense. And I met Smartlands in Berlin in one conference, and I started talking to them how I like their business model, because at that time I was looking at that tokenization space, and we agreed, to partner up, and I joined as a full-time CEO in this tokenization journey.
And can you tell us what you mentioned Smartlands and its business model. Can you explain what it is in the way that a person who has never dealt with blockchain before would understand?
Yeah, Smartlands, we are basically the team of 20 people. We are based in UK, in London. Also, we have a back offices in Vilnius and Kiev. So a team of engineers, entrepreneurs, investors, product developers, basically, and we have the FCA regulated framework. And basically at Smartlands, we focus on creating investment opportunities that have previously been out of reach for an average investor. So how it was previously a closed club of institutional investors, basically complicated structures, multiple middlemen, a lot of intermediaries, high fees. And now basically leveraging the blockchain technology, Smartlands introduces the concept of fractional ownership based on the blockchain. So we bring transparency to the transactions. Basically, we digitize the shares of real world assets, for example, real estate, private equity, and offer them in the form of security tokens, like digital shares, digital securities. So the benefit of digitizing securities is that they become highly divisible and also allows a very small fraction of ownership asset. So at the same time, it's a low buy-in thresholds, allows retail investors from around the globe to participate in the institutional level investment deals. So at the same time, the liquidity is not there yet, but all these real assets are illiquid. So by tokenizing, this token can be exchanged. What we're building now, it's a secondary market on the P2P level, but also we can list this token on the exchange, which is also being developed in this market, in this tokenization market. And we have the live use case, which is a student accommodation block in Nottingham. So there is a 12 million pound sterling building. It has 124 rooms, and it's already fully let. It generates the cash flow, almost 1 million pound sterling, and the people in the company that owns that building. So they get the dividends of the profit distribution, and then they get the capital growth on the asset. And then, meanwhile, in intermediary, before the asset is disposed, they can trade on the secondary market. And once the asset is disposed, they get back their capital plus the capital growth upside. We aim to tokenize of 1 billion of real economy assets by the end of the 2023. So we have a roadmap. That's our plan.
And you're focused on high yield investment opportunities. Can you tell us why did you focus on exactly this type of assets? Because there's a lot of people are trying to tokenize illiquid assets, and this seems to be liquid, and this is an attractive investment opportunities. How did you focus on this type?
Yeah, so I think with the technology, you have to solve problems. So by basically fractionalizing and breaking the barriers for the institutional level investment and providing access for retail, sophisticated, high net worth individuals, so they can invest alongside institutions, we solve the problem with our business model. So we have been developing our proprietary technology for 2 years before launch our first project. And then we saw the window of opportunity. Blockchain and asset tokenization can potentially unlock a multi-billion global industry that has been out of reach of a mass market. And by also we provide access to pay with the cryptocurrency for the token, and also with the fiat currency to pay for the token. So that unlocks additional around the world.
And who are the investors that you're targeting? Are these institutional investors, or are these retail investors just people who would like to invest like $500?
So we have several segments. We have retail, sophisticated, high net worth, and institutional. So all these customer segments as investors are there. But in order to move, let's say, this market, I think the private markets, institutional, has to also play in this tokenization game. So, but in order to be, mass adoption, to create mass adoption, so retail have to step into this game as well. Low buy-in threshold, basically, we allow, to allow to make investments with experienced asset managers, investment managers in this institutional level tokenized assets.
And you mentioned secondary market, and right now, actually, this is a very complex topic on the market of tokenized securities, because there are already some exchanges like Open Finance and T0 up and running, but there is still not too much liquidity there. What is Smartlands' plan to facilitate the development of secondary market, and what are you doing in this field yourself?
Yes, so because it's a new market, it's in a very early stage of development. So all the infrastructure is developing around the world. In some of the countries are pioneering this space, some of them lagging behind. The adoption is not there yet. The infrastructure is being built. So also the legal compliance frameworks are also being built around the world with various regulators. And we approach this. That's our plan, is to launch the secondary market, which is, the people will be able to exchange the token on the P2P level. So they list the token, and then the other side, the buyer can buy this token. So that's sort of semi-liquidity, but then institutional liquidity, we partnered up with Archax. This is forthcoming security token exchange, which is FCA regulated, which will be the MTF, multilateral trading facility, regulated of the proper exchange. So we plan to list our tokens there in order to reach the ultimate liquidity of the tokenization projects. Mm-hmm. So we are also planning in the longer run to obtain our own MTF license in order to launch on-chain, in order to achieve all the ultimate efficiency when we transact on-chain. So on the primary issuance, on the secondary trade, so it will be, everything will done on our chain. So then we can achieve the really high efficiency in that side. But it's a longer game, and That's our plan.
And right now that you're working on this P2P exchange that you mentioned, and how and where it will be regulated.
So our business is regulated, as I mentioned, in the UK. So we have permissions to arrange the deals, existing legal framework. So we don't need any additional permissions. So if you, for example, if you know Cedars, they have the secondary market. It's one of the biggest technology SME business crowdfunding platforms in UK. They have a secondary market. So on secondary market, you can list your share and you can sell the share. But we will do everything on chain, the same type of model approach on trading on the P2P level, the tokens, the digitized securities or digital shares.
Basically, what you're trying to do, what you're doing is it is disrupting the traditional industries, bringing in new advantages and new capital and access for wider audience. And in general, what do you think, what traditional industries can benefit from blockchain and how they can benefit from it?
So I think that traditional industries, I think I think the blockchain, there is a research, actually a lot of research in every industry can be somehow impacted by blockchain technology. So whether it's a supply chain business in supply chain, or it's a financial services. So every use case is individual. So I think, the technology brings this trust, the transparency, the accountability, the speed, and security of transactions. So that's the key technology features. And then once you apply all these features, there are plenty of use cases in the world. So the impact, I think it's huge. In particular, investment space, the field that we are working in, tokenization allows creation of new financial system on that more democratic, more efficient, and truly global. So in that our space, we basically disrupt the value chain because we disintermediate the value chain. So in our chain, if we build and utilize the whole potential of this technology, we can remove the brokers and the banks from the value chain. We don't need them with our business model. So that's drastically removes the weight of the cost from the value chain. Thus, the products become more transparent and more cheaper for the stakeholders in that space.
And right now, is tokenization a cheaper way to raise capital, or you see that this will happen only like in the future?
I think it depends on many aspects, what kind of property it is, where it is, and what investment capacity do you have. But in the long run, I think it is disruptive. For example, if you focus on real estate and you say that you can digitally buy the real estate and you can digitally change the ownership of that asset. So you create a liquidity and you create a digital ownership change, which is, if you compare to physical ownership change, it includes the cost, which is intermediary cost like brokers, lawyers, solicitors, etc. So in UK, for example, we have 8%, but in the global country by country, it ranges from 2 to 15%. So if we can transact on our platform below 1% on each digital ownership change, that's huge disruption in that sense. So actually the tokenization impacts, I think, all of the products of the bank. So bank accounts, payments, investment portfolio, etc. So this is really disruptive tokenization as a business model.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that like by 2023, you have plans to tokenize over 1 billion of assets, which is a pretty impressive sum. And my question, probably the last one for today, is do you see, like, how do people from traditional industries, like developers, owners of real estate, react, to the opportunities that you provide? Are they open to for the dialogue to try new opportunities technologically, and how this generally will affect the way that you're moving?
So I think that statistically the adoption is done by the early adopters, and we are in very early stage of this space. So we talk to 10 people, maybe one of them will agree to be an early adopter. Otherwise, the traditional and real estate is treated as one of the most constructive, conservative spaces. So it's really not so easy. But I think we are in the everybody agrees that technology is changing the world, and there are plenty of cases. So I think at that stage of the development of the technology environment, everybody starts looking with all their business models, CEOs, etc., in the technology, how they can impact their business model, and how they can basically learn and apply the technology to the business model. Because if I think some of them that if they do not invest in the innovation in technology, their business models might be disrupted and they could disappear from the business world. So that's I think there's this educational aspect to the CEOs, to the boards, to the shareholders of each businesses in the real estate industry as well. So we're talking to some of the multinational asset managers, and they are now in the stage to learn what is it, how they can impact their business model, and if the impact is huge, they are ready to start adopting and applying tokenization to their business model. We're talking to some Chinese companies, we're talking to Japanese companies, all of them, these real estate people approaching us, and they're saying, we would like to try because we think that's a future, and that's we approach as a testing, not to make the business out of it, but to learn and apply this model and test it. And if all goes well, we will be pioneers in that space and will be the forefront runners. So it's important as well if you're talking about competitive advantage for your business in your industry where you operate.
All right, yeah, I think this is it for today. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. It sounds really exciting, and we wish all the best in being this front runners. That's very important.
Thank you for having me here. Yes.
Thank you. This was Value Tokenized. Thank you for being with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to Twitter for shorter videos.